My name's Carel van der Merwe. I'm the sales director of EB-5 Marketplace, and we're an online platform that focuses on investments that result in faster processing times. So there are really three tracks for processing in terms of processing times. Normal processing is very lengthy now, and it could take several years to get your approval through sort of normal processing. As I mentioned on the panel, there's fortunately other options. In the new Act, there was special provision for rural investments. They receive priority processing, which we think is probably going to take about a year to get your approval. And then there's another track called expedited processing, and that's for investments that are in the national interest. And we do know that that takes a couple of months to get your approval. That's the official timeline for on USCIS's website for your I-5 to 6 approval. Currently almost 4 years. I am hopeful, optimistic that that will come down. That was obviously partly due to COVID as well. So I do believe that that will improve. This is the visa bulletin on Department of State's website for June. It sets out the number of visas available globally and for each country. And there are 10,000. We're obviously most concerned about EB-5. There are 10,000 visas available annually. Each country has an allocation of 700 or 7% of those. The good news is that India is current, so there are visas available. But the concern is that there are several thousand visas in process, and that could very quickly eat up the 700 visas that are available annually and result in backlogs. So the way you get around that is to invest in any of the set-aside categories, rural, high unemployment, or infrastructure. And roughly a third of the visas are set aside. So there's a lot of visas available there. In particular, rural gets 20% of the set-aside visas. So there's a lot of availability there, which we think will last for several years. So investing in rural makes a lot of sense. You're going to avoid any potential backlogs, and on top of that, you get priority processing. So we're obviously focusing very much on rural, and these are some direct rural opportunities that we have at the moment. So these are for single investors that want to invest in a business as a passive investor. For example, we've got a modular home builder called Dakota Builtwell. They manufacture modular homes, they install them in rural areas, and then they manage them for rental income. So they're looking for a single investor to help fund the business, and they're growing very rapidly. We've got a meat processing facility, and we've got 2 seafood distribution businesses. So again, these are small businesses, but they're in rural areas. You qualify for priority processing, and you'll have a visa available. This is a regional center investment that we'll have available when the regional center market restarts. It is a biofuel company. It's based in Pennsylvania, manufactures biodiesel. It uses biomass, converts it to biodiesel, and the byproduct of that is graphene, which it sells. It's a $250 million development. They've got offtake agreements in place. They've got supply agreements. They've got some state funding. They get subsidies. It's a great business, and again, it's also in rural, and so you get the visa set aside and you get priority processing. We're also fortunate to have an expedited deal. This is a hospital in Ohio. It's called the East Ohio Regional Hospital. It's operational. It's been operational for over a year. They have about 500 employees, and the reason it qualifies for expedited processing is because they're establishing a wing at the hospital to treat patients with opioid addiction. And Ohio is the epicenter of the opioid crisis in the US. So we do know investors are getting expedited in this deal. We've already had over a dozen investors that have been approved for expedited processing. We have that deal available. And in fact, these are some of the approvals notices that we got in the last month or two. This is a snapshot of our website. If you go to eb5marketplace.com, There's a lot of information on our various deals. You can click through the various tabs and you can see the project video, the due diligence video, the strengths and risks on each project. We try and put as much information out here as possible, make it as transparent as possible and as easy to understand. Our background at EB-5 Marketplace has very much been as a due diligence provider on other third-party EB-5 projects, but we use that same discipline obviously on our projects as well. When we analyze them, we make sure that they're going to meet your immigration and investment outcomes successfully. So these are some of the things that you would go through in the normal process of due diligence, verifying all the claims that are made in the offering documents, making sure that they're credible, performing background checks on all the key personnel, doing a market feasibility study, making sure the business plan is credible, evaluating the controls and investor protections that are put in place, and making sure any conflicts of interest, if there are any, are addressed. We don't have time to discuss all of that, but happy to chat about it afterwards if you'd like. Thank you.